attendees tonight to share with us some cool stuff, with what's going on in their studios, in your businesses. So you might wanted to share some wins with us. As you know, Highland Park is with you with your whole lapidary journey. So your success is our success. So let's hear it. Let's see some volunteers. You can actually raise your hands using the reactions icon at the bottom of your Zoom and click raise hand. Let's see.
I know Chris Strickland has some wins over there because I know my Ohio buddy is kicking butt. Let's bring Chris on.
We can volunteer Chris.
We volunteered Chris to come on in.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris. How are you doing? What's going on there?
Hi, Lizelle. I'm doing real good. John Sherman. How are you guys?
Good. Good.
Yeah, I got a real nice contract to cut like 580 pounds of obsidian. So I'm trying to run like 11 saws at once, which is very hard to do.
That's great. That's great.
Awesome.
That's a big win.
Yeah, that's a real big win. It's another big win. I put windows on all three of my 16-inch saws.
Yeah, I knew you were wanting to do that.
Yeah, I got those babies on. I made videos of it. I got my R1M all carpeted and polished that thing, and I made videos on how to carpet that thing too. I'll be sending those you guys away.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
Nice.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Chris. All the best there on Chris Rock Shop in Ohio.
Thank you so much. I love it.
Thank you. Let's pull up another one. Can we volunteer John Marshall?
Voluntold. He's there.
Hi, John. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine.
Good. Can you do you wanted to share some successes with us?
Well, we're not running a business, so I don't have any contracts to cut rock, but our groups on Facebook are quite successful, and we think they're doing a good job for people. A lot of new people getting in, and they all need to be started out, with the basic information, the basic learning. And so I think this sort of a session is very valuable.
So tell everybody what your groups are on Facebook, because there may be some people on here who don't know, who would like to participate.
Right. Well, we have a group called Lapidary, which is approaching 43,000 members. Now that seems unbelievable, but we've been at it for about 10 years since Denise Harrison and I founded that group. We understand from Facebook statistics that in the last month of time, 378,000 individuals visited the Lapidary group page. And
Wow.
that's not multiple visits. That's 378,000 people came to look.
Yeah. Now here's what's important about this for all the people who are listening right now. Back in 2011, we were talking to the Rock and Gem magazine guys, and the number of subscribers to their magazine back then was right around 25,000 people. Now, here's the other interesting piece. Their subscribership is going down. They're not keeping people engaged, and they're not really, what it tells you is they're not offering value.
I agree. There was another publication, I forget the name of it, frankly, it doesn't have much to do with Lapidary, that I don't think is doing very well either. Clearly, Facebook, other social media, and the internet is the way to go. And the ability to reach people is just phenomenal. And when you think about 378,000 people visiting just the Lapidary group page in 1 month, that is a huge number of new entrants into the hobby of lapidary or the business of lapidary, the art or the craft of lapidary, or all of the above. You know, some people
Right.
are all involved in it 24/7. And so at a minimum, I think that's a lot of new customers for you guys. And that's a good thing because of the value in your equipment. So there's Lapidary Group. There's also Lapidary Equipment Marketplace. Now, we started that group about 8 years ago, a couple of years after we started Lapidary Group. We started it because of the obvious need for a place for people to buy and sell lapidary equipment, used for the most part, because a lot of lapidary equipment, it just simply doesn't wear out. The old HP equipment doesn't. There's other brands that are very good, and it can be refurbished. And of course, the equipment you guys make, you know, the slab saws, they'll probably be still being used in the year, is it 2525? I forget from the song, but probably at least 100 years from now.
Yeah.
You know, they may have to change the bearings out. So that group is a buy and sell group. Lapidary Group, we keep strictly non-commercial so we can stay with content. But Lapidary Equipment Marketplace is a place where people can come, they can buy and sell, and they also can discuss lapidary equipment, do-it-yourself, tips in using it, how to refurbish it, that sort of thing, how to maintain it. So the combination of those two groups right now, Lapidary Equipment Marketplace is about 33,000 members. So the combination of the two is 75,000 members, something like that, and the visits per month are about 500,000. It's a huge group of people looking at this area. And then we have agate collectors worldwide, which is almost 40,000, and a smaller group devoted to petrified wood that's about 7,000. So that's where we've chosen to focus, and our goals are education and sharing and inspiration in the lapidary arts. And so our goals are very consonant with Highland Park's goals as far as that goes. You guys are providing the nuts and bolts, but we are providing a way to disseminate the information. And we find that the best way to do that is without any paywalls, without any subscriptions, without any money changing hands, because everybody can play. And I might also add that there's an open invitation, and I think you guys know about this. Any other lapidary equipment manufacturers who want to participate on our groups, they're welcome, just like you guys are. And you know, I'm listening, and we're trying to hear. You know, I don't approach them proactively, but they're not taking us up on it. You folks are the ones who are active on the groups and participate, and that's just flat unprecedented in the whole hobby of lapidary.
Yeah, well,
it's just never been like this. You know, I mean, you talk about market research and communication with the market and ability to understand what the market wants at any given point. I mean, it's just plugged in.
Yeah,
that's so awesome.
Yeah,
one of the things that John that you said,
we love what
by
you're
the way,
doing, John.
We're posting the links to the Facebook groups up in the chat. So people that are on the chat, you'll see the links to the Lapidary Marketplace, Lapidary Equipment Marketplace, Agate Collectors, and I think she's working to find the other ones as well. One of the things I would say that we've seen with Highland Park Lapidary is it's been pretty consistent for the last 6 years that 73% of the purchasers of our saws are first-time buyers. So they're not people that come in and they have a whole lot of equipment, like say Chris. Like Chris is a heavy, you know, hitter in terms of a production cutter. But there are people that come in and they'll buy their first high tone 10, high tone 12. Maybe they buy a 16 or an 18. That's their first purchase, and it's been trending about 73% of the people that are buying are new buyers. Which is testimony to you, like there's this growing interest of that. Really, our mission with Highland Park is to, and really the vision is to expose people, not only North America, but globally around the lapidary arts and have them both engage in the lapidary arts, either as somebody who's buying or somebody who's participating and making. Because it's one of those things that many people go and they look at a jewelry piece or whatever, and they don't actually understand how did it get to be there. So a lot of what we really want to do with this series of webinars is to have people get that desire to be like, wow, this would be cool. I can do that too, as opposed to just being a consumer that just looks. We want people to really be engaged.
We see that every day, especially on Lapidary Group. People come on and they'll join the group. They'll find out about the group. They say, I just can't believe what's here. It's like I'm in a candy store, you know. I just can't believe how beautiful everything is. I had no idea people actually did this. And you wonder, well, how did these gemstones get created? But it's illuminating to people to find out that they can participate in this too. They can be part of it. And it doesn't, you know, it's not a startup cost of a large corporation or something. You can go piece at a time and learn.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yep. Thanks so much, John, for sharing. We saw a growth in the Facebook pages that you're into. So we're really looking forward for more. Thank you, John.
I mentioned also there are other Facebook pages, hundreds of them, and people I think should explore other pages as well. What you'll find is that most of them are buying and selling pages, and so the actual content kind of gets drowned out. And that's the reason why we've kept Lapidary and agate collectors worldwide non-selling and non-buying, is so the content can be paramount.
Yeah.
But I'd encourage people to look around for other groups too, because there are specialty groups. For example, I believe there's sphere making groups, and you know, that's a subset of Lapidary. But if a person really wanted to get specific, and I know you folks love spheres, you know, that's an opportunity too.
Yeah, I think Bev Darby's got a sphere making group.
Yep,
good.
I think we're gonna try and do a webinar with Bev to kind of take people through the beginning of the sphering process, because I know there's a lot of people out there who like to do spheres. So we're gonna be picking different subject areas and then bringing in people who are pretty expert in those and doing webinars with them. So it really helps illustrate to people the details behind making things, not just talking about them, but actually having more, you know, detailed information.
Right, right. Looking forward to having Bev here.
See the comment there? Someone came on with a comment.
Well, you know what?
I thought you said spear making. Well, some people in Lapidary Group, they do make spears and arrowheads and various
that's a whole flint napping.
Yeah, well, not only that.
And we'll get some of those guys on this too, because they do some really cool stuff.
Right. We'll do one more. Thank you so much, John, for sharing. We'll do one more. I saw Zeke Dalrymple raising his hand. Hi, Zeke. You wanted to share some wins?
He may be. Oh, there he comes.
Oh, there we go. I was just going
buddy.
to say how much I love the marketplace group on Facebook. I'm actually driving on my way now to pick up a couple saws that I found in the group. And so that's an awesome place to find equipment. And I love Highland Park equipment. I've actually planned out how I'm going to replace all of my old equipment in the next 5 years with brand new Highland Park equipment.
That's
so
awesome.
I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, awesome, man.
Thank you, Zeke. Take care. Safe
Thank you.
drive. All
Eyes
right.
on the road.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your wins with us. Again, we're very excited for this session. So our topic for tonight is about the 5 essential facts of coolant and how they affect lapidary stone cutting performance. So John and Sherman will be sharing some information about that. The same drill after the discussion, you will gonna be we're gonna open up the question and answer you can raise your hand with the reaction icon, and also you can post your comments through our chat portion on the Zoom. Okay, so all right, I think we're all set. Everyone, let's give it up to John and Sherman Roland for tonight's Highland Park Lapidary Interactive Webinar.
Well, this is the future of Lapidary, and from Denise Harrison and I, we want to say that we're very excited, and we have been for years, with what you two and Highland Park and the whole company are doing for Lapidary. It's just a great thing. It's revolutionary. So thank you too.
All right, we have a pretty good group tonight. So I'm going to dive into talking about oil, cutting coolant, as we sometimes call it, and then I'm going to hopefully have a little bit more time for questions and answers. We went a little long last time and didn't have as much time, so I want you guys to have more time for doing that. So basically, most people are familiar at this point in time that the primary oil that is used in the cutting process that people talk about is mineral oil. Now, I touched on this last time briefly, that there's some people that talk about using kerosene or kerosene in oil or diesel, or transformer oil, or then there was some old material that was like Pella A or Almag. And those are basically, Pella A and Almag are basically derivatives of mineral oil, and they usually have other materials. They're not as highly refined, so they have other stuff in them. That is why they are they're stinky oils. Like if you run Pella or Almag and you're out in your shop and you come inside, you got to peel your clothes off and throw them in the wash, unless you want everything to stink like the oil. I got to where with Almag, I and Pella both, I can't have it on my skin, or I start, like my hands start getting irritated. And I mean, I ran Pella and Almag for years, and they work. But when I started looking at, okay, I need to find a solution for people that is, going to be not a health hazard, that is going to perform, and is, accessible. So I did a lot of research on the different, the transformer oils. One of the popular things people talk about, and one of the problems from it in the past, was it had PCBs in it. And
specifically, people are getting used transformer oil from the electrical companies. The old timers a lot of times would do that, and they're having exposure to PCBs, which is very unhealthy, carcinogenic.
Yeah. So and I see Ed, he just sent a message to me asking, how's the best way to dissolve or remove mineral oil? Well, it kind of depends on what mineral oil you use. Now, I'll talk a little bit about the refinement process. Basically, as you are distilling, refining an oil, the number of iterations of refinement affect how thin the oil is. So of course, if you process the oil for longer to get it thinner, it does get more expensive. The upside of that is you have a more pure oil. So if you look at basically like a baby oil, or oil that's used to remove makeup, what they call cosmetic grade, it would be used in cosmetics. It's been refined a fair amount to be more pure, but those oils aren't necessarily thin. If you have trouble with getting the oil off of your rocks, chances are you're running, a fairly thick oil, because it will stick to everything really well. When I kind of zeroed in on that I needed an oil. Like I did the testing. I showed the graph from last time where I did the testing on blade force.
And actually, why don't we grab that? Did you guys get queued that graphic up?
Yeah,
from
you
last
guys
time?
find that graph and we'll throw it up in a second. But basically what I started putting together as I was researching this and wanting to understand, you know, why a thinner oil was better. And it still needed its lubricity, which is part of the problem with kerosene or diesel, is that the lubricity drops down. That's why people throw some motor oil in with the kerosene, because they—
Well, explain what lubricity is, just so people understand what that means.
well, lubricity is the lubricating quality of the oil. So if you get kerosene on your fingers and you take your fingers and you rub them together like this, they kind of squeak. But if you put mineral oil between your fingers, it feels very, very slippery. Now, the thing is in the cut, when you got a blade that's in a deep cut, if you have thick oil, the oil doesn't pull into the cut well, and it doesn't flush the cut out well, and your blade will get dull. And the blade force and the temperature will come up. So, you know, and this chart basically shows the blade force, which is on the left-hand side, and then the viscosity, which is on the bottom axis. As the viscosity goes up, the blade force more than doubles.
So let's talk about viscosity. So viscosity is the thickness of the oil, how thick it is. So like molasses to water.
There's different ways to measure viscosity. I bought a machine that is, it's a special lab kind of tool for measuring the viscosity. And the measurement that we look at is in CST at 40 degrees. This is at 40 degrees. And because obviously if you heat something up, then it gets thinner. So, but the corollary to that is, if you have your shop in Minnesota right now, and you're using an 18 CST oil, when you start your saw up, that oil is probably going to be 40. It's going to be really thick. Matter of fact, if you get cold enough, it might actually feel like the oil has gotten to be a solid. And this is the challenge, is that if you're running a thick oil and then you get into a cooler environment, the oil is going to get thicker. And then that means all the dynamic of what happens as you're cutting, it gets worse. Like, what actually caused me to do all this research is we'd have people that are running their saw through the summer, and then in the fall in the Northwest, we'd start getting all these phone calls from people saying, "Oh, I got a problem with my motor. I got."
Well, I'll explain how the calls go. Your saw's not cutting. Your blade's not cutting. Note the word "your." It suddenly became not my saw, it's your saw. Your saw's not cutting. And we're like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah. So when we started looking at that, what we discovered is that the oil viscosity was the #1 driver in the problems that people were experiencing. And so it kind of became my mission to find a suitable oil, which we tried to do in the States, and there really aren't any great suitable oils, because most people are, when they buy mineral oil, they want to buy the cheapest possible thing. So when I located a source for the oil, then we ran a bunch of tests, and we could see that it really made a remarkable difference. Now, what's interesting is transformer oil, the old transformer oil, was really a great viscosity. When we look at it,
You can take that graphic down.
It's about a 5 to 7 CST oil. But the problem is that most people would either get the used transformer oil and then think it's okay. But the problem is that you got to use transformer oil. It's running inside of a transformer for a long period of time, and you don't know what else is in the transformer. And there's nobody that's taking that oil and actually testing it, because they're just wanting to dispose of it. So you run a risk of what you're exposing yourself to. Now, you know, some people don't care about that as much, or don't care until they actually have a problem. But me, I don't really want to have a problem. I don't want to be causing other people to have a problem by advising them, oh, that oil's okay to use. I wouldn't use it. Then the other way that people would approach trying to take a mineral oil and make it thinner is that they will add a viscosity reducing agent, some kind of
Solvent.
A solvent. Yeah. Now, there are some solvents that are not classed as carcinogens, but what we found, there's actually what's Kingsley's?
Kingsley North. I used to recommend people buy the Kingsley North oil because we didn't want to be in the oil
I don't
business.
know what the brand name of it is, but the Kingsley North oil has a solvent in it to make it thinner. And what we found is that we had customers who were having recurrent problems with their roller bearings starting to fail because they were running that oil, and that oil would get in the roller bearings, you know, because it's a very thin oil, so it can squeak past the seals. It'd get in the roller bearings, it'd dissolve all the lubrication out, and then the roller bearings would start sounding like gravel. And it took us a while to figure that out, that's what was causing it. Now we have a lot of recurrence with the oil, the pure mineral oil in saws, and we know it doesn't do that, which is why that's what we recommend. So that's material of the oil. I will just say this: if you are on any of the lapidary groups on Facebook, any of them, and you hear the guy goes, well, I've been using diesel for 40 years and it's fine. This is a guy to ignore, because these guys burn their shops down. And unfortunately, and you're talking a tremendous health hazard, because diesel and kerosene both are significantly carcinogenic. You get it on your skin, you're absorbing it into your body. If anybody has ever had a friend or a relative or themselves deal with either skin cancer or other types of cancer, it just is not worth it. You know, the cost of the oil, you know, you're talking a couple doctor's visits, and if you get cancer, you're at many. So like, for people, just don't even consider that. The savings is not worth anything to do with sacrificing your health. So that's material and viscosity.
Can I just touch, you may come back and touch base on that, because you said about the mineral oil being less expensive, more expensive earlier on, and there's a clarification I wanted to do there. Because a highly refined oil in America, you know, some people say, well, I can buy a mineral oil as a mineral oil because they think the word's the same. Because it has the words mineral oil does not mean they're the same oil. And John touched on this, but I want to reiterate this. So some people say, okay, I can get a mineral oil from Tractor Supply that you put in your cow to, if it's constipated, right? You give it. That's a very low refined paraffin, which is great for the cow. It's very thick. So it has the characteristics that John was talking about, that it has a lot of viscosity change with temperature change. And it costs the same as what we sell our oil.
They're a little cheaper. I put it this way, Sherman. You know, you can buy that Tractor Supply mineral oil, the vet grade oil, pretty cheap.
Like 19 bucks a gallon or something like that.
Yeah, it's not going to perform. The reality is, and I'll tell you this: there's plenty of people that are using that kind of oil, and they can get away with it if they keep their blades straight, you know, like sharp. But the you know, the wear and tear and the stress on the drivetrain components, those people will buy more parts from us. That's just the reality of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yeah, the Kingsley to Baz, the Kingsley North does have some kind of a solvent. And then I saw Craig ask a question about water soluble oil. That is a great question. There, and you'll see some advice on this pops up on Facebook. Now, let me differentiate here. You have trim saws and you have slab saws. Now, there are some materials that you just can't cut with oil because they will absorb the oil and it will change the color of the material. It will degrade the material in some cosmetic or other way. And certainly I've cut materials that are like that I would not want to run oil in.
Mhm.
On those, our trim saws, and pretty much any trim saw, you can run them with water. You can use a water soluble oil, but if you're wanting to get away from oil, you don't want to run a water soluble oil anyway. You just want to run water. It doesn't really, there's not really much point if you're running a trim saw and running the rust preventative additives, because the reality is if you're running a trim saw on water, our advice is dump the water each night, so it's not sitting in the saw, because even if you put the additives in, you're still going to get some rust. The best thing you can do is dump the water at night. Don't leave the blade sitting in water, the tank sitting in water. Just dump it. Water, like water's easy to add, and it lets the saw dry out at night, or if you don't run it for a few days. The worst thing you can do is leave the water in it and have an additive in and think that, oh, my saw is protected. And then you come back 6 months later because you got really busy with other things and there's rust all over the inside and guts of your saw. It's like, if you dump the water, there's no problem.
Right.
So the second thing is that some people, I don't know whether Fred's on here, but some people are cutting really soft materials and they absorb oil. And
He's cutting Petoskey stone, and
he's cutting
case.
Petoskey, and he doesn't want to run oil because he's cutting a huge volume. He's doing some tile business, and it's pretty cool what he's doing, but he wants to be able to run his saw with water. Now, obviously, we tell people you run water, you're going to void your warranty, but I can tell people a way to do that to minimize their risk to damaging their saw, which the first rule is dump your water at night.
And number two, leave your hood open.
Yeah, you open the saw up so it can dry out, and then spray down your rails and stuff, and accept that you're going to have more component issues if you run water. But if your process benefits from it, it can probably be worth it for you. Like for him, he's cutting 3x faster. He's cutting a huge volume of material. He's got a contract to make the stuff, and it's a commercial enterprise for him and he can benefit from it. So if you look at slab saws for a water soluble oil, yeah, the water soluble oil is cheaper, and because you're mixing it generally 10% or 15%. But the problem is this: those oils are designed for like CNC machining or other kinds of processes that are not a diamond tool cutting a stone. Yeah, you can get away with them, but it is not ideal. You're going to see a water soluble oil has very low lubricity, and you're going to see the blade force go way up. So if you look on that blade force curve, you're going to be on the far right-hand side of that running a water soluble.
And that means your feed nut, feed screw, worm gear, ring gear, those are typically what gets wiped out when we're doing like, we run saws in water in our Philippine operation because of the material we're cutting. And we'll know we'll always wipe out. We have to sharpen the blades constantly. And we know that we're going to wipe out those drive components, those feed drive components.
Yeah. So there will always be people that say they run it and it's fine. But a lot of times if you walk in those guys' shops, you're like, oh, that's not a very well-run shop. Again, the mineral oil is your optimal. If you're cutting agates and jaspers, water soluble oil is a great way to end up pulling a rock out of the vise and crashing the blade.
Can you talk to food grade mineral oil? We get a lot of questions about, well, what about running food grade mineral oil?
Well, it's really the same thing. You know, if you look at vet oil or food grade or cosmetic grade, they just describe mineral oil and its use without actually talking about the viscosity. You don't really define clearly the product. You know, it's like motor oil. You know, you got motor oil that's all these different weights, the 10W30 or the 5Ws or the 80W, which is like more of a gear oil. That's weight. It's a different system for measuring viscosity. It's all pretty much the same type of oil, although they have synthetics now and all that stuff. But the reality is that the 10W or 5W, that is telling you what viscosity and why the viscosity matters is the design of the engine is better used for certain viscosities, you know. So same thing with slab saws is that a 5 to 7 CST viscosity is what is the right viscosity. And the oil that we have is it is actually more considered a cosmetic grade. Food grade, basically, it has to be pure enough that you can ingest it. Which, you know, the standards for vet oil and a food grade oil for people are a little bit different because, you know, they'll let a cow eat stuff that they won't be allowable for a human.
Yeah. Well, can you, because
cosmetic grade is obviously they're looking at, you know, it doesn't have anything on it that would harm the body.
Right. One of the things that, remember Chuck Scott, when he had tried the food grade in his cutting operation there, and he had the problem of the oil going rancid. And remember, he did all the replacements of the crossfeed nuts and things like that. Chuck Scott has a really impressive cutting operation.
I think you're talking about vegetable oil.
Or maybe he was, because there was an error where people were doing something like that.
I actually should mention this because basically if you're looking at vegetable oil, it's probably in the top 3 of the worst ideas to ever do. Actually, I can't remember what it was. The guy that was down there in San Antonio had a rock shop. Anyway, he got the brilliant idea that from somebody sharing helpful information that he should run vegetable oil in his saw. And he did that. And he ran it for about 2 months. Now, vegetable oil, and some people may already be familiar with it, vegetable oil will turn into resin and it will coat everything inside the saw with this resin that looks like, well, it starts looking like amber, and it's really hard to get off. And literally, this guy scrapped his saws because we just couldn't clean them. Like, it wasn't, luckily, it wasn't a great saw. It was like an old Royal or something, but he scrapped it. It was so much of a mess because that vegetable oil just coats everything and then it hardens and turns into this resin on everything. So vegetable oil, horrible idea. So mineral oil, naturally corrosion resistant. So you got the material, the viscosity, corrosion resistance. Obviously, anything that's water-based or water-soluble oil-based, it doesn't have corrosion resistance. You either, if you're running a trim saw, you dump your water to avoid it. And then we talked about additives. That's number 4. In general, you don't want additives. I will say this, a lot of people use the Stellar the Stellar oil. Kevin Kessler. I've known Kevin forever, and Kevin's oil is probably the closest viscosity wise to what we recommend. His oil is a reclaimed mineral oil, and I don't know, because I'm not sure I've ever seen a clear MSDS on it, but I'm guessing, I know it has additives because they add the smell to it, the orange smell to it, which means the only reason you add an orange smell to an oil is that you're covering up another smell. So I don't like adding anything to an oil like like a flavoring or a smell, because it's generally an indication that the oil stinks to begin with. But it would not surprise me if it's got some kind of a solvent thinner in it. But I will say this, with people that are running that oil, they haven't had problems with things like roller bearings. So it's not a horrible oil. I mean, it's better than running like a food grade mineral oil that's too thick. So if you like orange smell, then maybe that's great. But I don't like any smell in the oil. I like to be able to pull my hands and wash my arms off after I cut and not have any stink on me. So then the last thing, and then we'll go to questions. The last thing is cleanliness. Now, I will have people send me messages sometimes, and they'll be like, my saw, I'm having trouble, with it. And it sounds like the feed dogs are slipping. And then they'll show me a picture of their saw. And it basically looks like somebody dumped a wheelbarrow full of liquid mud into their saw. And I'm like, well, okay, you're cutting silica. If you're cutting agate and jasper, it's all silica, all really hard, really abrasive material. And now you've created this fine mud that's carrying all these silica particles. And now you're going to let it coat everything in the machine and keep running it. And not only has the viscosity gone way up because it's almost a solid now, but it's got this abrasive material in it, and it's lapping everything inside the saw. So
explain what lapping is, because people are not going to know that word. I know we're in lapidary.
A lot of people might know the word, but lapping is where you take an abrasive compound and you are grinding a surface, a fine grinding of a surface. So basically, that's what happens if you get that kind of muck in your saw. It's running down your feed screw, and the feed screw's turning, and it's just working away on the feed inserts and on the feed screw and on your bushings and on your cross feed. It's an abrasive material. What you want is the oil liquid where you're either pulling that out with an Everclean, or that stuff can just drop down to the bottom of the saw. When the oil starts to shift from a liquid to a colloid being your jello or your pudding, when it starts to make that shift, you are just a tiny bit too late to change the oil. You should change the oil while you're still in the liquid state, because that helps prevent this really funky, dirty oil from coating everything inside the box. And I'll have people ask me, well, how do I clean that off? Like, it's not, once it becomes pudding, it's not easy to clean off. It just coats everything, and you're like, if I leave a saw like that, typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it the best I can, throw new oil in it, and the new oil is going to wash it down, which gets the new oil dirtier. But that's why we use Evercleans, because it's definitely more hard on a saw to let it get that dirty.
Well, touch on what an Everclean is, because some people here may not know what that is.
Well, let's ask a question. So how many people in here know what Everclean? Well, no, how many people in here don't know what an Everclean is? If you don't, put no in the chat comments. The chat comments is the little icon on the bottom. You can open it up and you can see when people ask questions, and So okay, so there's some no's here. And I see we have somebody from Indonesia in here too. Welcome from Indonesia. So, and Everclean, do we have
I'll bring a picture. I'll bring a picture up on my end.
Put an image up. And let's see.
I can just.
I'm not familiar with, for Arthur, I'm not familiar with the MLS quick cut oil. I'd have to look at the MSDS on it. So when I say MSDS, that's the material safety data sheet. Every chemical that's produced and sold in the US has to have an MSDS. And what that does is it allows, anybody like firemen or hospitals to be able to see the chemicals involved in the material. But it also tells you critical information about the content and the physical properties of the material. So if you look at an MSDS for an oil, it will list the viscosity.
Actually, Markar, why don't you just pull up a MSDS? Let's just show people how to read an MSDS. It won't take but a few minutes.
Yeah, so if I use terms that people don't understand, certainly throw messages up and say, "Hey, what's an MSDS?" Because
no question is a dumb question at all.
Just the one that doesn't get asked.
That's right. You find that Markar, find that MSDS. I'm not quite sure where to get it. Super handy.
Let's see. I may have it. Well, I know I have it. It's under media. All right, I know what I'll do. Because I'm gonna share my screen on this MSDS here so you guys can see it. So basically, this is a material safety data sheet for our oil, and it tells you what it is, and you'll see this, there's a CAS number. This is a numbering system that is required for chemicals that tells you its true nature. And then the description: white mineral oil, petroleum, blah, 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 blah. And then hazards. It has to outline any hazards, any firefighting. So that gives you an idea of its flammability and physical properties.
Don't go so fast. Slow down.
Physical properties, you can see things like vapor pressure, vapor density. Some of those don't matter, but right here is the CST, the viscosity. So basically, for any oil that's out there, any company that sells it is required by law to provide the MSDS to anybody who asks for it. So if you know that, then you can get an MSDS for anything and look at it and compare it. It's just about like having the knowledge and being able to. And somebody just asked me what CST is. I've looked it up before. I would have to look it up. I cannot remember that in a moment. You could look it up. It's on the tip of my tongue.
I got it right here. It is the kinematic viscosity is 1 meter squared per second is equivalent to, so it's centistokes. It stands for
Centistokes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's centistokes, which is a measurement of viscosity.
Yep. Yeah, if you Google that, you'll see. I mean, I just ran into Chevron Marine Products, and they have a definition, but it's
it's fairly common. There are some other, this is the metric. This is the metric version of it. Every now and then you'll see viscosity listed in what they call standard, which is less standard at this point in time. So let's open up the floor.
Do you want to pull up that Everclean first? Or just
show the Everclean. I almost forgot about that.
All right, so I will share my screen
here. What the Everclean is a buddy of mine and I came up with this idea, and then he'd played around with making a welded version, but it was really expensive. And then what I did is I took this and I designed a version that can be done with a casting and keeping it simple. And because it's a centrifuge. So basically the can that's sitting in here will have a lid on it, and that can spins, and because the motor's attached up through the center, and the oil's pumped up into the top of this, and the centrifugal force pulls the dirt particles out to the side, and then the oil flows back up out of the can and then comes down through that white flange and returns back into the saw.
Let me explain by the lid. The lid is actually round with a hole in the center. So the dirty oil gets put down the center, and then essentially as it's spinning, it's forming a donut of oil and sludge going up. And as that oil goes, it gets poured, dirt oil goes in the bottom of the can, it spins out, and it's exposed to about 3,000 G-force through the cycle time that it gets to the top. We did measure it, John.
No, it's not 3,000.
I'm gonna prove you wrong. It's down here. I'll find it. Anyway, 3,000 G. Yeah, I calculated this, dude. You gave me all the metrics, so you forgot. So, but through the duration of the time it goes through there. And then what's happening is your particles are spinning off. Your heavier particles are going to spin off on the bottom, and the very top, you're going to have more of your finer particles that will spin off. And essentially, you'll get a donut of sludge inside that can. And then the oil then comes back up after it's crawling up the side and then spin out. So you got dirt oil coming in the center, and it's spinning all at the same time. And you run this as you're cutting. So it's dynamically taking the sludge out of your oil so your saw never gets dirty. Does that make sense?
The idea
it bolts onto the saw. So this bolts onto the side of your saw. Or if I put this on an Everclean, I mean, it would bolt on the side of a shaping machine, for example. Here's showing a shaping machine with an Everclean on the side of it. Same thing. It's just a centrifuge. This concept was used in the old case tractors, and also many of the military transports use centrifugal filters because they don't want somebody in the field changing a filter. You know, when you got a bathtub of oil to clean, so centrifugal filters are used, and especially like some of the UDLP, vehicles, and some of the tanks will use centrifugal filters because it's just simply, it's not a consumable that now you need to drop into the battle environment to deal with that. So this was really kind of inspired from the old case tractors that have been using this for a long time. Back to you, John.
All right. So Rick asked about putting one on an HT14. So on the Evercleans, they're a fairly large size unit. I would say the smallest saw that I would mount one on is like a 14-16 HP saw, which is much bigger than a high tone 14.
That would be a model 16. We would call that a model 16.
Yeah, it's too heavy to put on a tabletop saw. It's too heavy for that. Yeah, you're to MBN. And MSDS is the old language. It's all SDS.
Awesome.
All right, I'm gonna keep going.
All right. So let's see what other questions we have. Do we have any hands up?
So,
wants to-
okay, let's open up for interactive Q&A. Whoever have some questions, they can, because we already answered and covered the questions earlier. We covered that on the discussion that you made. So if ever there's additional questions, you can, okay, we have one. Let's pull up Dan Wiggins for his question. Hi, Dan. Tell us where you are and what's your question.
Yeah, I'm in DeLand, Florida. And do you guys know anything? You were talking earlier. I wanted to ask a question, but you went on into the lubricants. Do you ever done stone carving? You ever worked with Nova points?
You mean like the grinding tools?
Yeah, for sculpting stone.
Yeah, I have done some of that. I haven't started carrying much of those kind of tools. Do you have a specific question about using those tools, or?
I just kind of like your opinion on them, if you've used them, or anybody else.
If I remember correctly, that's a resin type diamond tool, right?
Right.
Yeah. They're definitely very useful for carving applications. I mean, typically you're roughing with a sintered or a plated tool, and then as you get into the finer grits, you can't use a sintered matrix past a certain point, because it will make as big a scratches as the diamond, that you're using. So that's where shifting over to a resin tool will help you finish out more quickly.
Well, I haven't used them personally, but I've been making my own diamond bits.
Yeah.
And up to 3,000 grit. I formulated an epoxy that would work with it, and
Cool.
it's really working well. I'll go up to the market with it someday. Probably contact you guys and say, hey.
That'd be awesome, dude. Where in
Yeah,
Florida
we like it.
are you, Dan?
I'm DeLand. It's 20 miles west of Daytona Beach.
Okay. I
It's
get down to Florida quite a bit. We got buddies up in Ormond Beach, and of course I'm down in Miami fairly often as well.
Mocha Gym and Lapidary Club.
Yep. Jim Gilbert, you know Jim?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good guy.
Ed and Ginger,
Yeah. And we do stuff with the Tampa Club too. So the Tampa Club, they've been really doing some nice stuff and growing as well. I shot a bunch of video down there with them.
Yeah, cool. Now,
Awesome.
DeLand is the home of Stetson College.
Okay. Yeah.
Great little town. Love it.
That's awesome.
So
Thanks. Like, keep us posted on those tools. That's
Yeah.
definitely cool.
Yeah, I've actually got right there behind me, if you can see it, is a mold for making 5 different things. And so far, they are just outstanding, but I've never used a Nova bit.
Yeah.
But it can go from 50 to 3,000 grit. So
nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
That's very cool.
All right, let's go with Eric Rondo. Hi, Eric.
Hello, how are you? I had a couple of questions that are actually left over from last time. One of the things that was discussed was the fact that the vise doesn't stick out far enough, especially for heavy rocks you're trying to treat.
Underneath, like you're talking on the vertical vise saws? Like on a 16, 18, 24?
Yeah. But we're talking about the base. You got this big heavy rock and you're trying to hang it out there that wants to tip over on you. I had an idea, if you could make, I don't know if you can see this, but if you could make something like this that you could hook on the side of the vise and have this lay over and extend out. If you were to make some of those and make them available, I'd probably buy 1 or 2. You could make them in different sizes. But that
it would hook on the right side of the vise, hang over the left side, as long as it didn't go out too far, because obviously You want to
Right.
just get it to the edge of that vise, so that basically gives you a little stabilization as you're putting, as
Yeah,
you
so,
clamp your
so
rock.
that your rock doesn't want to fall off the edge like this. You
Yeah.
would just stick it out a little bit farther. And that way it wouldn't change your vice adjustments or anything. So that was one idea I had. And another
Mhm.
one I remember from a long time ago, I have CDO. Do you know what that is?
What is it?
See,
CDO. That's OCD in alphabetical order, like it should be. Okay. So I was figuring out, I went over and read all kinds of things on the net. And one of the things that people were talking about, when if you don't have or can't afford or too cheap, whatever it might be, to buy a one of your Evercleans,
Mhm.
they claimed that they had made something out of an old shovel that they could get down and scoop like this, the grunge out of the bottom end, and then recycle the oil that way. I was wondering, since you guys are in that business, if it might be worth your while to make something like that where we could kind of use generically. I'd find it useful.
Well, you bring up an interesting thing. In my particular case, before Everclean, when I did shovel up, we just used, I use this down in your shop, John, to start getting the sludge out, is before we drain, is I just use a scoop. And then of course, you're gonna try to get your heavy stuff out. But it doesn't, like, it's a kind of a filter type of thing. Your challenge in there is you don't have that much space. And your ideal scenario is to drain that thing and filter it. If you're like, the classic thing without an Everclean is a 5-gallon bucket, a lid on there where you drill a bunch of holes on it, another 5-gallon bucket, drill a bunch of holes in the bottom, throw a brown paper bag in the top of it, which are now getting easy to get. And then you're dumping your oil in there and you let it seep through like a big coffee filter. And you're just cycle those. We used to have tons of those in John's
Yeah.
shop before they ever cleaned.
Right,
The
but
shop
where do you
could have
find
like
brown paper
15
bags
buckets
these
in it
days?
before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where do you
in,
find
in
paper
general,
bags?
if like I was thinking about actually making some kind of a simple device for that. So that's it's not a bad idea. I like your idea on that vice support. I can definitely make some of those up.
Yeah, and they just need to be strong enough to kind of take some of the weight off of it, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you could position it without having to hold it and get it clamped, especially if you got a bigger piece.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was doing some petrified wood, and of course, which side you want to cut off? You want to cut off the flat side, leave the round side, which leaves all the weight hanging over the edge.
Yeah.
And then lastly, and this is for my own benefit, and I think I know the answer. Your split nut replacement for I have an old, not one of yours, one of the old Highland Park saws. Does that split nut replacement fit the drive that I have, or do I need to replace? both
Are
of
you
those?
round rail or square rail on that saw?
Square rails?
Yeah, it'll drop
Yeah,
right
it's
in. 18, 24, 16, they're all drop right in. Now you will need to readjust the dog plate. So the dog plate is that plate that has either 3 or 4 bolts that the feed dog and the handle goes on the front of your carriage.
Yeah.
So,
We
and I have a video up on the website that shows you exactly how to adjust it.
Yeah, follow that
We'll follow
video
up.
because that adjustment of the feed dogs will affect their alignment and how they grip that feed screw. If they're not perfectly in alignment, you do get unnecessary wear. It's not horrible, but it's much better if it's adjusted right.
And yours has replacement, as I recall, yours has a replaceable innard. So once I've done it, if I ever need to replace it, I'm all set.
Right.
Yep.
Now replace your feed dog spring at the same time. A lot of guys, they'll buy the feed dogs, but they won't buy the spring. And I'm like, the spring gets wimpy, and that can actually cause your dogs to wear out because your clamping force is not enough. So do it both at the same time. You don't, and you saw there's a double the amount of thread on those feed dogs. John designed that because he says, I'll do that as a lathe part.
So,
Stick it back there.
thicker. It's thicker this way than
Yeah.
yours.
Right. So it goes
Well,
underneath this. You're going to see
It's the front, it's front to back. I extended the feed nut
Right.
behind the feed dogs another 3/4 of an inch, so I get more.
So instead of being this much thread, you double it so that it's thicker.
Yeah,
than
exactly.
right.
Exactly.
Right.
And I hated tearing everything apart just to replace feed dogs, so I made it as an insert. So I saw that there were some questions here on the left. I wanted to try and capture some of these.
Hey, thanks, Eric.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thanks,
thanks.
Eric.
Thanks for your comments and your.
I like your
questions.
idea.
Is a wetting agent in the oil good or bad? Well, I don't know exactly what a wetting agent would be. So let me speak to MBM, whoever that is. Water-based lubricant in your 6-inch trim saw is absolutely fine, although I would suggest dump it at night. And be looking at it. If you use it every day, maybe you don't need to. But if you're leaving it standing for periods of time, much better to dump it. You don't have risk of corrosion then.
I would say
let's
one
pull
other
up-
thing, John, on that trim saw, when you're
Yeah.
running water on your trim saw, you do need to sharpen your blade more frequently because it's going to get duller faster because of the lack of lubricity. So just pay attention to that because you can use same technique, just don't beat the heck. Depends on like if you're running like a 32 thousandths blade, that's a little bit tougher to sharpen with that Bastrofile technique than if you've got something a little bit wider.
Right.
Right. John,
Quick response to Zeke. When are we going to make quote unquote Nova wheels? Now, I won't call them Nova wheels because Nova is a trademark name that belongs to Diamond Pacific. We are making a competitive soft wheel, and we've done a whole ton of testing, and they're really awesome. And I have a huge shipment of them on the water right now. So they should be landing here in the next probably 4 weeks, I think. Anti-mist agent in the oil. No, if you've got thicker oil, the mist is going to hang in the air longer. Thin oil settles out faster. Anti-mist agents in general are going to be chemicals that will then complicate what you expose your body to. I generally avoid them.
Can I add one point to that too?
Yeah.
So sometimes people get a lot of misting if they also have too much oil. So the bottom of your blade, depending on the size of the call. So if it's an 18-inch saw, I should cover that blade in maybe 3/8 of an inch of oil. I shouldn't have.
It depends on the size of the saw. Like if I'm running an 18, I'm going to have a 1/2 inch on the 18.
Right.
If I'm running a 6, probably 3/8 of an inch.
So what's important is if you have too much oil in there, it's going to produce way, way more splash. So the number one thing we run into is people put too much and they got too much of that blade cover and it's just flinging it everywhere. So just make sure that your amount of blade coverage is not excessive.
Yep. John, can we pull up Daryl Engelhard? He got some questions. Hi, Daryl.
We can't hear you, Daryl.
You're muted.
I think you're muted on.
No, unmute there. And then I don't hear your microphone though. Nope, still not hearing you. Now you're muted. I think it's not to do with, I think it may be the microphone on your computer or phone. And you probably got a really good question too, I know.
We'll come back with you, Daryl.
Okay, yeah. So I see a question from Lynn Anderson. Do our 12-inch blades fit lower tone 12-inch slab saw? Of course they do. Yes, they're standard. And Chris wants to hear about supply chain issues. So supply chain, well, a lot of people, and this kind of ties into the question, a lot of people ask about why we build the saws in China factory, in our factory here. And when I started doing this, I started it in Texas. And the first year I started doing this basically was just an ass whooping because I couldn't get the material I needed without shipping stuff all over the country. You know, I need this part, I need that part. Hello? It all comes shipping in.
We got Daryl on.
It gets damaged in shipping, and the cost was crazy. So for supply chain, we have everything we need. Our supply chain is very, very strong here. That's why we're here. We're not here because labor's cheap or because factory rent is cheap. We're here because supply chain is here. All of my suppliers, with the exception of 2, are within 5 miles of my factory, and they deliver it to me for free. Hard to beat that.
Well,
Can you
and
hear
the
me
other,
now?
yeah,
we can hear you,
now as well.
Daryl. So I'll come back. I'll say a little bit more about supply chain. Let's take Daryl's question.
So thanks a lot for this. Is fantastic. You guys doing this.
Good.
And I want to preface by saying I got 2-year saws. I got a high-speed trim. I've got the Everclear, and we just bought a 24-inch slab saw for our club.
Awesome.
However, I tried to start up my new drill today, and it blew the fuse the fuse was blown inside of it, and I put the spare fuse in, and it popped right away.
Oh, ultrasonic drill.
Yeah. I can tell you probably what has happened there. There's a device called a variac, which is what changes the voltage. And we pack them really carefully, but if the UPS guy decides he wants to drop kick it out of the back of the truck, that can damage that variac, and it will cause exactly what you're experiencing. So Lizelle, get with Daryl about getting an amplifier switched out for him.
Yep.
Well, just a variac.
We can probably switch out the variac. You guys figure it out.
Yep, I can help you on that, Daryl.
I can, I took the lid off to see if I could smell any blue smoke and see any field, and I saw the variac there, so I could change that out. I'm electrical, but not electronic, so I can't do much more than look for burn spots.
Yeah, it's just some wires, and that's the piece that always gets hammered, because there's a carbon tip that goes around in there, and if they just beat that thing up, and you saw I double pack it, so I put the box in the box, that if they beat it up, it's going to break. They still
are rough on them. I'm working on a new design on an amplifier to go all digital. So when I get there, then all that analog side will be gone, because the digital will take an incredible beating, because that's pretty much become the standard in shipping now, is that if you ship something, they abuse the crap out of it, which is a sad thing that is the standard, but we've accepted that that's what we're going to experience. Anybody that's received products from us, you can see that we put a lot of effort, and we spend a fair amount of money on making really good packaging, and sometimes they still are hard enough on it that they'll damage something. But as always, anybody that gets anything from us, if there's a problem or damage, we're going to take care of it, because that's just how we work.
I just think this is kind of a different thing, because it has the electronics, and everything else you has the parts. So the whole troubleshooting concept is a little bit more challenging. Plus, the resolution's challenging too, because if it isn't the variac, it's probably the whole box needs to be swapped.
Yeah, we just swap it. We just swap the amp out.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You betcha. So come back to the supply chain issue.
So let's see, MBN. Yeah, we're making 600 grit plated diamond wheels. I've got the shipment of sintered wheels, plated wheels, and soft wheels coming, and I got a whole lot of flat laps coming too. Just a huge amount of work to get those products where I'm happy with them, and I'm really happy with what we have now. And I know you guys are going to love them.
I think actually those wheels, Lizelle, can you check what shipment container? Because I think we've got 5 containers right now in transit. See which container that's in.
We have containers in the water. We have 2 on hold, waiting to get released, hopefully this weekend or
probably next week they'll be released. We got the random inspection to make sure that we're not having hardwood. Like in the import, you'll sometimes get the lucky draw that your container got pulled to go get checked, and we run a fair amount of containers, so that should come to us early next week, the Boston one.
So let's see, we got some more questions here on this side. Let's see.
Heidi had a question on up about core drill vise.
Core drill vise. So we need to get Heidi a copy or a link to the video where I show how to do the drilling. Basically, to answer the question, we don't recommend using a vise on the core drill. And the reason being is that a vise grabs a thing and squeezes it. And if you're putting a core drill down through the middle and the rock fractures or the squeeze on it, causes the rock to shift or anything, then you're going to have a crash. And I did, like when I first designed the core drill, I was thinking the very same thing. I made all these crazy elaborate vices. And then when I started running the drill, the vices all were a failure. And they were a failure because you can't really grab a rock from the side and try and drill down through the top. And what I discovered is I don't need a vise. That what I do is I take the rock and I buy bags of plaster Paris. It's super cheap. It's like $4 a bag. And I would buy, this is when I was running my sphere shop in Texas. I would buy a half ton of plaster at a time. A local ceramic shop, and it's cheap. And I simply would lay a newspaper on the cement floor, newspapers down. I'd set all my rocks and figure out where I want to cut the sphere and what surface I wanted to drill on, so it's as flat as possible. And we're going to do a webinar on exactly this stuff with sphere making. But I cast the plaster around it that holds that rock in position, and then make a nice, wide base with the plaster. And then when the plaster dries, I lift it up, I set it in the drill, I center it under the bit, and I get a big long screwdriver and I put pressure on that with the screwdriver. And the other hand, I'm just bringing that bit down until I make contact. And I wait until I've got full contact of the core bit onto that rock.
Meaning it's drilled down enough that
and
all
then
the
I can
segments
turn
will
the
touch.
feed up, and the rocks, again, my segments on my bits are not like anything else you can buy anywhere else. I spent probably 7 years figuring this one out, but they're free cutting, which means the blade force is low. As long as you keep them sharp, blade force is low, and you don't need a vise. It just sails right down through that rock. Basically, the cutting speed is about 1 millimeter every 15, let's see, 1 millimeter every 15 seconds. Yeah, 1 millimeter every 15 seconds. It's a pretty good cut rate. It's mind-blowing if you've done sphere preforms with a slab saw where you do 26 cuts to get this 8-sided cube that then it's going to take forever to grind. And then you set up the core drill and you do your first drill of a rock that's about 4 inches out of a hard jasper, and you drill it in 12 minutes. And then you realize what you just did is you did 8 cuts in a slab saw in one drill. There's no comparison. There's no comparison. One core drill can outwork 10 slab saws. A fraction of the cost.
But let's be clear. When we're talking about a core drill that's like we purpose built, we tried to do like the core drill. You buy the core drill for concrete.
You have to have a core drill that's really designed for that, to get that kind of performance. You know, if you buy a Hilti or a Bosch setup that's used for drilling concrete, you don't have variable speed on your spindle. You don't have control of the feed rate. You don't have those things that are really important if you're preforming spheres. Yeah. I know that when I started, because I bought all these slab saws when I was running a sphere shop, and the money I spent even buying used slab saws, I could have bought, like if somebody had one at the time, I could have bought one of these core drills and produced way more finished product. Like I'm spending all my time and I'm going through gallons of oil and running these saws, and my electric bill is pretty stout, and the net result is that then I had these clunky preforms that then I had to grind the shit out of and then put them in my spear machines. And then I was running grit back then. So the rough grind could take 8 hours on a piece of Brazilian agate. And now if I core drill that same Brazilian agate, I do 5 drills, my rough grind will be roughly 10, 12 minutes.
And you're around.
And you're
Let's
round.
answer some. I want to answer a couple of questions here. So Steve was asking, will the 14-inch chop saw slab? Absolutely. It's got a crossfeed on there. That if James Carpenter, I don't think James is on here. James uses that for one of his primary slabbing saws, unconventional lapidaries. He does beautiful work. And that machine will cut extremely fast. Now, the downside with the drop saw is you've got to be manning it. The upside is it's wicked fast in terms of being able to slab, and it will give you very good slabs.
David Briggs asking 14-inch saws. Are you talking HT 14s or 14-inch drop saws?
I think he's talking the HT.
Okay.
Saws.
HT 14s. Yeah, I got a bunch on the way. I got right now, I've got 5 containers on the water.
63 waiting.
So 63 coming. I don't know how many of those are sold, but
we've been building like crazy, and I've got 2 more containers sitting on my floor right now. That's basically, this is a Chinese New Year's holiday. There's a big holiday right now. So as soon as we're back, I got 2 more containers. We'll finish up and launch. So we really ramped our production a lot. And right now it's just shipping time we're waiting on.
Hoffman was asking about larger felts. I think you sent me some. Were those wider felts that you sent
Those
over
are
here?
wider felts. I did do a wider felt for this.
Yeah, so I have those here in stock, Hoffman. And then upgrades on C8 accessories. Like, when are you getting the end plates and stuff like that, John? And also those rubber seals.
I just finished the design for the end plate, and I've got a couple of injection molding shops quoting me the splash guards for the ends.
Awesome. Yeah, so for some people have the C8, it's like blows some water out of there. So we're going to have these real slick guards that can just pop right in there. And then you can remove them if you're putting accessories on the outside. So you got flexibility there. Nova wheels, yeah, Ken, they're coming. And I'm not sure. Are those in the containers that are pending in the port in New York and Boston, Lizelle?
I can't tell you at this point in time. I don't have
Lizelle
visibility for
Yep.
the MRP.
yeah. I know they're close.
Is that a yes, Lizelle?
Yes.
Oh yeah, so imminent. We're just waiting for the stuff to come through and be delivered. I know I'll get 1 container hopefully delivered next week, maybe 2, we'll see. Just hopefully not on the same day.
Hey, Sherm.
Yes?
Yeah, we have some question from Heidi.
Oh, Heidi. There's Heidi who was asking the question. Hey there.
Hey, question for you. We are putting in a new lapidary shop here in Mount Ida. And so we're waiting on all new equipment coming from you guys. So,
I just shipped it out to you, and you have the most awesome, like, your street view of your place is so gorgeous there.
I appreciate that.
That's gorgeous area you live in.
Thank you. So we have a 36-inch drop saw that we use, and we have mines in New Mexico, Arizona, and now we have a crystal mine here in Arkansas. So but we're getting into the brand new lapidary side of things. My question is well, our material's big and I'm getting old. So I was wanting to know what you guys are using, like our big petrified and our agate pieces are huge. So that 36-inch saw that's coming, some sort of a lift with a vice system that is not kicking our butt would be just so much appreciative. What do you guys use?
You want to answer that first, John?
Well, I've used a couple different things. I mean, when I was young and dumb, it was all my back, but I got kind of tired of doing that. And now it's like, if I do that, I really start regretting it. I've used more recently one of these scissored type jack tables that you basically can get the piece on and then jack it up, and then on our 36, you can take the vice jaw off the 36 and jack that scissor table up, and then just, lock the vise in position and shove the rock over onto the table. And that is what kind of works the best. But I'm actually in the middle of finishing up 2 45-inch saws right now, and I kind of have to work out, what will work best for those, because I got, really big petrified wood, and I know the guys that are going to use these big saws, that's probably what they're going to do. It may still work, but it would have to be a really, because you could be feasibly putting 500, 600 pound piece up onto that vise. So it'd have to be a pretty stout,
Well, like with us, some of our big stuff, and especially with the crystal mine, we're hoping that you guys would eventually fabricate like a diamond wire rope saw, where we can take it out in the field and I can set it up and we can cut the plates off of the boulders over there. Is that something you guys might consider?
It's possible. I love designing new equipment. You can't tell. I mean, basically, I'm the guy who designs everything here. But I've played with some diamond wire saws, and I think for lapidary, they need to be a little bit different design. But it's something that we certainly can get together and talk about, because I don't mind doing a project like that if I think that there is enough interest that I can build some units and have people, like I started doing the core drills. Like a lot of the equipment I designed for me, and then when people have come to me and expressed interest, then I'd be like, well, maybe I ought to make that product commercial, and then I can take the design and figure out how to make it more producible and lower the price, because like my first core drill is insanely expensive to build, and now I can offer a pretty badass core drill for what, $10,000. I mean, that's a fraction of what I spent on my first drill.
Hey, we're waiting to send you that rock lathe so you guys can fabricate it up for everybody else. So let us know when you want us to ship it.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Heidi.
So I think there's a few other questions here. Yeah, Zeke, you can order soft wheels. Replacement jigs for the drill. Yes, we do. That's for Jason Russell.
Jason's on
Julian
here.
wants to see more on the forming and shaping machine. I think we'll probably do a webinar just on the shaping machine here, because it's a really amazing machine that a lot of people aren't familiar with, that can allow, it's the reason I started making it is it's very, very powerful for being able to produce many pieces of high quality and be more competitive to the international shops that have cheap labor. I believe that if you've got the right technology, that and if you have good judgment about the quality of the stone that you're cutting, that a US shop can be very competitive with international shops.
Yes.
But you're not going to compete on the $2 items. There's no point in doing that. It's low margin stuff. Let them have that. You want to compete on high quality items. So we'll do more with the forming machine for sure. And then Julian's looking for videos on forming, shaping, ultrasonic drill, and bull wheel. And I do believe we've got a lot of those videos. So maybe team, you can see about getting Julian the links.
I saw also a question up here earlier, if I can find it. On that, this is for Baz Dretch about that used HP saw. Check on our website. You're going to see historical HP lapidary catalogs going back to 1946. So I'd suggest you dig in there and you're going to look at pictures of them and match it up. My guess is that that's probably an E series trim saw with a 10-inch. Probably like John and I's first saw was the gravity feed 10-inch Highland Park saw we got in 1970. Weight wise, you put the weight in to make the blade go. We didn't really like gravity feed. I'd always be pulling on it like it's too slow. So I'd be pulling on that.
So I got a question. I got a question for everybody that's on here. And then I think we'll be at a wrap point. So are there any Great Western saw lovers on this call? Anybody have a Great Western saw, love a Great Western saw? Put it in the chat comments if you do. If you don't know what a Great Western saw is, put that in the chat market, in the comments.
So great says Great Westerns are really cool. Bob says no. What is it? Don't know.
Okay. So I'm actually thinking about doing a couple of models for the Great Westerns, because the Great Western saws were basically a different saw design because they had no power feed on them. They were gravity. Now, anybody that's ever talked to me knows that I don't like gravity feed saws. Now, there is an exception. Okay, if you take a drop saw, it is a gravity feed saw by design, but it doesn't work the same as like a slab saw with a cable on it trying to pull a rock through a vise. Now, what's interesting about the Great Western designs is that they are a slab saw with a gravity feed with a weight. But the thing that they did different that makes them not suck is that they got a hydraulic cylinder. It's a passive cylinder. So the cylinder, all it's doing is it's controlling how fast that carriage can move. And I became interested in making these saws because I've had them before and I appreciated the design. It's a brilliant design. And I believe I can make them and offer a lower cost slab saw for people who are coming into the hobby that don't, they want a bigger saw because they're 18 and 24-inch saws, but because there's no power feed components, they're less expensive. And I think that they're a really viable, bigger entry-level machine. So that's what they are. I'm actually working with Russ and I can't remember his last name, Knuth, on trying to find a couple to reverse engineer. But if anybody's interested in that, you can definitely message me on Facebook and I'll tell you more about it.
Yep.
I'm always looking.
Would you try to make some of the parts reverse compatible? So the guys who have
I'm going to make them 100% reverse compatible. So for anybody that has Great Westerns, that they can, Now the other thing about Great Western saws is that if you're cutting less hard materials, they're always going to cut faster, because a screw feed saw has a fixed feed rate. So you're going to go through the cut at a fixed rate, regardless of how hard the saw is working. With it, with a Great Western with the hydraulic dampener, it's really a dampener. What happens is your cut rate starts out high and then slows down through the middle of the cut and then goes back up high, but it's controlled. So it's not like a drop saw with just a cable. The problem you have is when you get to the end of the cut, the carriage is going to slam all the way to the end. And if there's basically a little piece of the rock that is got a tip on it, it's going to get drug across the blade. And then if you're not there and it sits there at the end of its travel, it will just dig a hole in the side of the blade until it separates the blade from the hub of the blade. And don't ask me how I know that, because that was like my experience with a drop saw. So that's why I don't like a drop saw. Now, the Great Western won't do that. It finishes the cut. It's going to sit there and slowly go to the end of its travel. And if it has a little tip on the end of it, it's going to just trim that right off. And so I like that because I'm always thinking about products that are going to help other people who are new to it, who want to get started, who maybe want to keep their budget for it lower to start with, but still get a really great machine, I think that they fill that bill.
A says that Kessler may have a machine. I mean, we got a 24 from Kessler in the past.
I'll have to ask him about that.
Ping Kessler up on Facebook. See if that could be great.
Yeah, I'm looking for. I got my hands on an 18. I gotta find a 24, and I don't care. I just need it. I just need it for a while. It's one of those kind of deals. If somebody can find a 24 and you go, oh, I found a 24, it's $1,000. I'll buy the saw if you take it all apart and help me measure all the parts, and then you can have it when we're done. How's that for a deal?
That sounds like a deal.
Because I don't care about keeping the saw once I'm done. I'm just going to do it for the design.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Yeah. John says, let's put a thing out on the
that's a good idea. So
that's good.
So in the chat comments, if this was valuable tonight for you guys, just put a yes in the comments. And then as always, if there's anything else you guys want us to talk about, just message us, let us know.
Cool. All right. Well, guys, let's call it a wrap. We went over a bit as usual. So thank you all for being here. We got 60 people. We're at 75 for most of the night. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you again next week. We're going to have a new topic. We're working to plan that out, and we'll probably have our hopefully our first guest speaker in on that, where we'll be doing some demonstration as well. So we're working on that. So stay tuned.
All right.
All right. Take care,
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.